Good evening. I want to address an officer-involved shooting that took place this evening at approximately 6:15 in South Minneapolis at 36 and Cedar Avenue South. The information that I'm providing for our community at this point, please know that there will be more information, more facts coming, but it's important for me to update our communities as soon as possible. MPD officers were conducting a traffic stop involving a felony suspect. Initial witness statements indicate that the subject involved in this felony stop fired first at Minneapolis police officers, who then exchanged gunfire with the suspect. The subject of the stop was pronounced deceased at the scene by medical personnel. MPD officers were unharmed, and an adult female who was a passenger in this subject vehicle was unharmed as well. I immediately, upon receiving this information of this officer-involved shooting, I notified the BCA to conduct our officer-involved shooting protocol. BCA is currently at the scene, conducting their investigation and gathering critical evidence that's needed. At this time, I would also say that, very importantly, I've been reaching out to community members, faith leaders, and others. I know that there are several who are out at the scene, who are gathering, and again, we want to do everything we can to protect everyone's First Amendment rights to freely assemble and demonstrate. But I say again, we cannot allow for destructive criminal behavior. Our city has gone through too much. And so if, in fact, those demonstrations or protests should evolve into civil unrest, then I will make the decisions in terms of how we can try to peacefully resolve that. But I want to stress this again. For those who are out there, we respect you practicing your First Amendment rights, but we need to keep our officers safe. We need to keep the community members safe. And I tell you, we need to preserve that crime scene so that the facts can continue to come out as it relates to that. Officers, body-worn cameras, I'm being told by investigators, were activated. And I want the community to know that I plan to release the body-worn camera footage tomorrow. I want the community to be able to see what occurred, and I think that that is part of, again, us moving forward and wanting to make sure that we get the facts out there. But again, for those individuals that are out at the scene right now, please allow me, the investigators, the time, and our officers the time to make sure that they properly do a thorough investigation of that crime scene, and so that we can collect the necessary evidence. Disrupting that scene out there, conducting any sorts of criminal behavior to harm that community, we cannot have that. We cannot allow for that. I've been briefing Mayor Fry, and he's been getting updated regularly by myself. And I want to also give an acknowledgement to our mutual aid partners who, through their assistance, again, are coming here to provide the peace for our city. And so at this time, I'll pause for any questions that you may have.
Can you tell us more about the community response team that was involved in the traffic stop? I know people at the crime scene were asking, what does that mean? Who are those people?
Yeah, our community response teams, or CRT teams, were actually started over probably a couple of decades ago. And those were teams that were really designed for precinct inspectors to deal with different types of crimes that necessarily, or that our 911 responders typically wouldn't have the capacity or time to do. And so some of their work involves narcotic investigations, some of their work involves gun related crime investigations. And so this, I'm told, was part of our community response team that was out there.
Was it could you specify on what they were doing? Were they
Yes, at this time, I don't have much information in terms of their investigation, other than that there was a felony subject who they conducted a traffic stop near that 36th and Cedar Avenue South.
Chief, can you clarify, was it an MPD officer's bullet that did hit the man and killed him?
At this time, this investigation, which is just a little over 4 hours or so, I would not have that information. The BCA is working thoroughly to again, gather that information and those facts.
Chief, it's my
Yes, sir.
understanding with these community response teams, I think there's one fourth precinct, one first precinct, about 6 to 8 to 10 officers.
That's correct.
Have a specialized unit and sort of high-risk situations, high-risk arrests at times. Is that fair to say? Because it's drugs and weapons usually. Could you tell us, was this considered a high-risk suspect that they were trying to apprehend, and for what? Can you tell us that yet?
Yeah, our community response teams, as you mentioned, they will typically do a lot more work as it relates to perhaps search warrants and other types of high-risk situations than perhaps a 911 responder. So they're trained in that. As far as the details, obviously a felony subject is you take that into high regard in terms of your approach to that situation. In terms of the details of the specific investigation of theirs, I don't have many details further than that.
Chief, was there any kind of exchange between the officer and the suspect before the shooting started?
Yeah, was there any exchange before the officers, with the officers and the subject? That I don't know. I don't know at this time.
Okay.
But I do, in releasing the body-worn camera video tomorrow, we'll all be able to take a look at that.
And anything you can tell us about did the suspect have a violent criminal history? Did the officer have any misconduct on his jacket?
Yeah, so when part of the protocol, when we bring the BCA in, we are really freezing the scene, so to speak. We are really holding that scene. It's their investigators who are going to do all of that investigative work that you just talked about, looking into officers' backgrounds that were involved, the subject, the investigation, what the investigation was, what led up to it. And so as I stand here before you and our community this evening, I don't have all of those details.
Chief, would it be fair to say, this is, I mean, given what the CERT teams do,
Yes, sir.
fair to say most likely that this guy, the suspect, was probably considered possibly dangerous, armed. I mean, they go after weapons and drugs. That's what they do. Could you go so far as to tell us, was this guy considered armed, dangerous? What?
So again, I don't have all the details in terms of what specifically prompted their investigation or how far into their investigation they were. Other than obviously anytime you're having some of these felony types of situations, those are serious. I also want to really withhold a lot of information now until we see the body-worn camera video. I know that our communities have been very sensitive about law enforcement coming out and characterizing someone before truly we have that information. So I want to be respectful to our community in that regard too. But I think, again, as we release the body-worn camera video tomorrow, it allows our community members and others to see that.
Usually with the CERT teams, aren't they veteran officers? I know in the past sometimes they were guys who had 15, 20 years experience for this kind of stuff. Is that still pretty much consistent that these would be veteran officers doing this kind of stuff?
It's going to vary. It's going to vary between the teams. Typically or historically, the supervisors of these teams have really been veteran supervisors. But in terms of the makeup of the personnel, that could vary. And I don't know all of the makeup right now, the personnel that was involved.
And I'm sorry, one thing. As far as we can't answer any questions at this point about the officers that are involved under state law. So we can't even get into how much time did this group of people have on. So again, we have to follow chapters out of 12 and 13 out of state statutes.
Chief, can you be a little bit more specific about when do you move in? Which there are people out there, the crowd has grown, at the scene. So are we talking arrest, and when do you move in?
Yes, for those community members who are out at the scene there, again, I'm speaking to you specifically. We will absolutely protect your First Amendment rights to gather and assemble and to demonstrate. But we cannot have criminal conduct or behavior. We need to keep the community safe. We need to keep our officers safe. Throwing box, rattles, ice chunks, we cannot allow for that. We cannot allow for any damage. And so if the situation should evolve to where it becomes civil unrest, then I will absolutely have to make that decision. It's about keeping our city safe. It's about keeping peace in our city right now.
I know it's active right now, but have you had trouble holding that scene? Because obviously that group was growing. They were very close to the scene itself. Have you heard from officers there if there's been any trouble holding it?
My understanding, and I appreciate our mutual aid partners who are assisting us. And again, right now our main focus is to allow that crime scene to get the facts, to get the evidence, so that we can make sure that the BCA can conduct a thorough investigation, but we cannot have individuals attempting to tamper with or contaminate that crime scene.
Is that happening?
I have not heard of that at this moment, yes.
Chief, just walking into the building here moments ago, we saw convoys of armored vehicles going up and down downtown streets. Is that just precautionary, or what are they doing?
That is precautionary. Again, as chief, I recognize the trauma that our city has been under, and we want to do everything we can to keep the peace. Creating a situation of unrest where we're damaging our neighborhoods that are still suffering, that are still trying to rebuild. We're doing all of this underneath a pandemic. We've seen a rise in violent crime. Just urging our folks to keep the peace out there.
Ms. Lou, you just got here.
Yeah, I was listening, so I'm pretty up to speed. One question.
Yes, sir.
How many officers fired their weapons?
No, that would be part of the question that you just asked. That would be part of the ongoing BCA investigation, and so I don't have that information. They would be the ones to bring that forth.
And besides that, it was a felony. You said it was a felony stop?
That is correct. That is my understanding.
More details on the nature of the stop?
Other than our Minneapolis officers conducted this traffic stop of a felony subject at that location, I don't have any more information as regards to what prompted the investigation, details of that investigation, and that'll be, again, something that the BCA will be doing as they conduct their investigation.
Was there any sort of pursuit or any other sort, before he fired a gun, was there other resistance besides obviously firing a gun at officers?
Yeah, to that question, I don't know. That will be part of the BCA investigation as to anything that may have prompted or led up to that.
And besides at the crime scene or near the crime scene, are you aware of any other groups gathering right now?
There's groups out there currently.
Yep. In other locations in the city, are you aware of any?
No, I'm not aware of any. Yes.
Chief, what do you
So
say?
last question, please go ahead.
What do you say to the folks who are out there right now and thinking, this is really a familiar scene. This is really similar to the protests we went through this summer. All the reforms and such that your department has done aren't working if this is what we're seeing again. I mean, what do you say to those folks out there? It sounds like there's a lot of concern about keeping the peace. But if they were here right now, what would you say to them?
I would say that, one, I recognize and I certainly understand the feelings that they have. And as I had mentioned before, I know that we are a city where many still are traumatized, and they're going through quite a bit. What I would say to the community, and what I'm saying to the community members that are out there, is please allow myself, please allow the BCA investigations to do a thorough investigation, to get to the facts, to collect the evidence that's needed. But I do know this, re-traumatizing or reharming the community through other acts, such as civil unrest and harming, whether it's destruction of property, that won't get us any closer to, if there's a point to where we as a city are going to begin to heal, looting, destruction, acts of violence, that won't help us. And so what I'm saying, and I have to be held accountable as chief, please allow me, the BCA investigators, allow us the time. Let us get the evidence. Let's get the facts. Let's collect the evidence out there, and so they can process this. Again, we're about 4.5 hours from this happening. I'm letting our community know. I will be releasing that video tomorrow. That's a first. And so I want our communities to see that so that they can see for themselves, so that they can, any questions they have, any concerns they have, and we can move forward from there. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you all
very much. I will make sure that...
That was Police Chief Medaria Arradondo addressing a deadly officer-involved shooting that again happened around 6 o'clock this evening near 36th Street and Cedar Avenue South. We're told that the MPD's community response team was doing an investigation, conducting a traffic stop on someone they consider a felony suspect. We don't know what that felony is they're speaking about. Police say that witnesses say the felony suspect fired first and then officers exchanged fire. That suspect ended up dying at the scene. No officers were hurt, nor was a passenger who was in the car. Police say they've been preparing for possible unrest. They're trying to preserve that crime scene. And of course, I think one of the biggest points that the chief just brought up is that body cameras were activated, and that body camera footage will be released tomorrow. We've also gotten a statement from Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. It says, events of this past year have marked some of our darkest days in our city. We know a life has been cut short, and that trust between communities of color and law enforcement is fragile. Rebuilding that trust will depend on complete transparency. I am working closely with Chief Arradondo to gather all the facts surrounding what happened tonight, and we'll be relaying that information in coordination with state partners to the community as quickly as possible. We must all be committed to getting the facts, pursuing justice, and keeping the peace.